have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
I know I love you guys. Good morning. It is Reality Rants with Jason Bermas, brought to you by RedVoiceMedia.com. Remember, the second hour, completely uncensored. And it's how you support the broadcast. RedVoiceMedia.com/Jason/uncensored, or just listen to it over on Podbean. This is going to be a jam-packed show. And the question is, in my mind right now, with everything we have going on, and we're going to show you some of the underplayed financial stories right out of the gates, because it's important. Probably the most important part of the whole shebango. Okay? Of the whole sauce. Because when you saw what they did via the COVID-19 84 nightmare, all right, I said that this was a slow rollout, and this was basically 1929 meets 9/11 hysteria. All right, and they're going to bring you along the way as much as they can. Is this the final financial blow? Let's start here. Assets of U.S. banks are worth a massive $2 trillion less than their accounts report, and 200 banks could be at risk if customers rush to withdraw, leading academics warn. Now, whether you believe this is fear-mongering or not, I've got a clip with Thomas Massey that we're going to go to shortly via the Jesse Waters program, where he just basically explains the same thing he was explaining to Raskin, right? We've diluted the monetary system again and again and again, and the Federal Reserve absolutely, positively has a huge role in this. A huge role in this. You know, cutting to 0% sounds great, right, when you're talking about rates, until you have these venture capitalists that just invest in anything. Because, hey, it's not costing me anything to invest. That's part of the issue. But the big part to me is that you want a consolidation of resources. And there were many mechanisms in play pre-COVID-19 84 that were going to play into an economic collapse for over a decade. Again, we went back in time yesterday. I had been talking about the fact that you had less and less accountability via the global banking system. Forget about just the United States. And when you had the International Monetary Fund, which is basically an arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. Okay, this is what I talk about with this broader network. Okay, people need to read John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman, because you would go into these third world countries and use mafioso tactics on behalf of U.S. interests, which were IMF interests, okay, and take control of the resources while enslaving and impoverishing the people. Very lovely. Awesome. And basically, we get a new gloss of paint of the same agenda because they go in there and say how benevolent they are. Boy, it's going to bring jobs for everybody. It's going to bring big time globalism, you know? And then they'll blame something on a terrorist group playbook. But the IMF itself, over a decade ago, started doing what? Began the digital currency revolution. And I'm sorry, all you guys out there that want to fantasize about Satoshi Nakamoto with his magic money, Bitcoin. That's a Defense Department project to get you ready, to acclimate you, to socially engineer you when the time comes for them to bring in their track trace database, not just over the skin, but under the skin, biotech currency, social credit score, carbon credit score, the whole shabizango. You've been acclimated somewhat. It's not just shock and awe, you know, that term they like to use even prior to Iraq. You get it? So I'm sorry, I don't believe in fairy tales and unicorns, and I don't believe in Santa Claus, and I don't believe in the magic Bitcoin man. All right? Because, again, at the same time that starts to come into play and have momentum, you have SDRs, special drawing rights, for the IMF. Zeros and ones, baby. And now, how many times have we played that World Economic Forum piece where they sit there and talk about what? Blockchain humans. Blockchain humans at refugee camps. Please, Governor, may I have some more? Oh, you get your food there. They're going to find you jobs. You can sleep in a tent. I mean, when the world's so unstable, what we want is the World Economic Forum and their cronies coming in with the United Nations and the World Health Organization and taking over. Meanwhile, you have to layer that, as I just talked about, not just track trace database, but what was done in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have to grow up. The biometric harvest that happened there and the drone warfare that happened there, still happening on both levels, by the way, was the beta test to go global. You know, that's why you look at the title here. Yeah, we're talking about bank runs, but we're going to be talking about World War III in a second. And that Reaper drone. It's bad news brown. We're in bad news brown territory. We actually may already be in kind of a hot World War III scenario. And I hate using that term because, again, you could argue the war of terror and the decimation, you know, is World War III. But traditionally, you don't have one side just stomp out the other in a global conflict. There are heavy casualties on both ends. And that's not to demean the casualties and losses and injuries we've had in that war at all. I'm just saying when you look at the scale of a World War II, even a Vietnam, right? They don't compare to a Gulf War, to a post 9/11 war in any way, shape, or form at all. This one, a U.S. soldier's really dying? It's there. It could happen. So we're going to get into that. I want to read some of this article because they're getting you ready. They are getting you ready. And look, Massey talks about how he's not taking his money out of the bank. Okay, I get that. I'm not either. I'm not going squirrel nuts yet, but it's not like I have a massive amount of money in the bank, guys. I don't know about you. It's not like I have a massive amount of assets. Certainly don't have that anywhere near that $250,000 marker that's supposed to be insured. And like Massey warns, it's what is the currency actually going to be worth? Will we see even more inflation that supposedly was transitory or didn't exist? Again, it was supposed to be imagination land, like St. Nick or Satoshi Nakamoto. Assets held by American banks are worth a staggering $2 trillion less. And that's what they're saying now. I bet you do an audit, that doubles. That's speculation, guys. But mark my words, they start doing audits, that $2 trillion might not even, that might just be like, okay. Like they might, for instance, one of the ways you would doctor the books is in your physical assets like real estate. saying something was worth much more than it actually is market value at this point. And with the markets crumbling, in most cases, you're going to see diminishing returns. All right? So in the accounts, because of unrealized losses, like those triggered the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank, a study suggests, and a run on the banks would leave customers at nearly 200 institutions facing losses of up to $300 billion. I think that's minute. Okay? And the question is, as this goes down, I see America looking at it like this. The big boys haven't taken the brunt yet. Haven't seen a Bank of America fail or a JP Morgan Chase fail. That would be the trigger point of a lot of panic. And look, let's be honest. The vast majority of us that are still around have never lived through a true economic crisis like that one in this country at all. Don't know what it looks like. Okay? We really don't know what it looks like. We don't know how quick everybody's going to turn on one another. But I can tell you right now, the solution, no matter how bad the problem becomes, is going to be way worse. Way worse. And I kind of want to go down the line and talk about some of the other aspects of this before we get to the Massey clip, and then we'll play Massey on Waters. Massey on Waters. Silicon Valley bank failure deals a blow to Europe's startups. Because again, you have a 0% interest rate. You have people getting into all sorts of risky things overseas and otherwise. So I also see what I saw Kim Iverson talking about, especially when you're looking at tech companies. As this unfolds, the smaller tech companies that can no longer financially survive and may have pushed away offers hoping that one day they can be valued on the stock exchange, and that's when they sell, might have to sell for pennies on the dollar. And then what will happen is most of their staff will be eviscerated, and their technology, in most cases, maybe a couple of their programmers will be absorbed. You're going to have massive layoffs. And we've been talking about massive layoffs in the tech industry, especially when we're talking about Facebook and Meta. And guess what? They ain't stopping. They be trucking. 10,000 more employees, and it's not going to stop in this economic reality, according to Zuckerberg. Let me explain to people what's happening here. All right? All you people out there that in the last 10, 15, even 20 years in my generation, a little bit further back, that got things like communication degrees, and you worked for PR or pushing best practices and that type of thing in the tech industry, you're not going to be necessary much longer. That's one. You're kind of garbage. They're consolidating you. You're do-nothings. You're being automated out. In other words, a lot of these campaigns, whether it be social media promos or billboard promos, can be actually handled by not only less people, but AI and less people. Automated tools. All right. And by the way, NASA big on this months ago. Who knows how long ago, because time flies. I did a video on this, on how people were actually, and they were bragging about it. It was the craziest thing. First of all, that this goes well beyond NASA, but NASA's in charge of it for some reason. And that they would have what? These people had no choice but to basically train their replacements. They would be fired and cut in half. So now, yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, the vast majority of you, and hate me if you want, there are some people that do comm, and they also learn something like engineering, audio or video engineering. That's different. Especially if you get in on the production side, you're learning a trade. If it's just talking, bye. Just emailing, bye. Just social media posting, bye. And then you're going to get to actually what I think is something, at least that was difficult for me, and I never pursued it beyond a point because it was frustrating and I wasn't good at it, but programming, computer programmers. Well, now, if you're really not top tier, first of all, the top tier people, they're going to be able to oversee more of the automated and AI tools. So those people will be less and less necessary. They'll be able to cut some of those people. That's where we're at. Think about it. And the technology at this point, you have to understand they can't scale up from the consumer level that we're at now until more social engineering is done anyway. And they don't necessarily want to scale up. I'm going to show, believe me, I've got some fourth industrial revolution stuff today. We're talking about, for instance, we talk about 3D printed organs. Martine Rothblatt just sold some United Therapeutics. Now that stock is up while a lot of them are down. And MIT now has a heart that they will print for the individual. So individual specific printed hearts. Now, I'm not saying that that's something that's ready to be scaled up. I'm talking about this being technology now that's being rolled out. And by the way, Martine, we're going to show some of the articles today, very adamant on having the whole print factory of organs. It's an old print factory of organs. And I'm sure that's going to be for the vast majority of us. Because billionaires love regular people. Billionaires love regular people. By the way, 240 watching over on the YouTube. Can we get 100 thumbs up? By the way, if you're watching over on Rumble, you can also like this, share the links. I want to thank all the Rockfinders out there as well. Twitter's about to delete like my entire video archive. So I'm glad that I've never done something specific with Periscope or Twitter, but I just got that notice. I guess I'll still be able to stream live, but that's something that's alarming to me, that they don't want to archive those things. I mean, the fact of the matter is that memory gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and storage itself gets smaller and smaller and smaller. To me, it's almost criminal not to archive. And don't think that they don't have a hard backup. When I say they, I mean the intelligence apparatus, not just the company. The company probably has a hard backup too, no matter what, on some kind of server of every moment. Every Twitter moment, every keystroke, for God's sake. All right, I got one more in the economy right here. And then we're going to play the Massey clip and move on to some other stories. This is Tim Schwab, and Tim Schwab does some really good stuff on Bill Gates. We're going to show Bill Gates and his electric rickshaw. It's just incredible. I love Bill Gates so much, and the videos that he continues to put out and the things that he says makes me love him even more. A lot of love for that guy. So Schwab's done some legitimate journalism on Bill Gates, and he made this point, and I think it's a really interesting point. I'm going to read the bottom one first. This is interesting. Forbes and Bloomberg have competing lists of the richest people in the world. Forbes ranks Michael Bloomberg as number 7 with $95 billion. Can you imagine? Again, I love Bloomberg so much. See, there's a billionaire that's got all our best interests at heart. He shows it, huh? Bloomberg Media doesn't include Michael Bloomberg in the top 500. Can Bloomberg Business, can they explain? And he says, by omitting the world's 7th richest person from its supposedly journalistic list, the world's richest people, Bloomberg misinforming the public. It's creating an alternate reality in which Michael Bloomberg's $95 billion doesn't exist. Is it not misinformation, pure and simple? It's the manipulation of reality. We're in the post-truth world, Tim. Constantly highlight that here because that's a reality. We live in a post-truth world where the powers that be are the authoritative sources and are allowed to push their great narrative no matter how absurd. And we're seeing those absurdities every single day on a mass scale. It's embarrassing, quite frankly, how absurd things have gotten, and I know a lot of you feel the same way that I do on that matter. That's why you watch, because we also show things in the backdrop that show you what the true agenda of the absurdity is. So I want to go to this Waters clip from the other day with Tom Massey. And Massey, again, he kills it all over the place. He's the dude, for sure. Like Tom Massey, I'd love to get him on the show. Imagine doing an hour or two with Tom Massey. That would be fun times and nursery rhymes, kid. I'll tell you right now. By the way, before we go to the clip here, there you go, Jesse Waters. some people were in the comments saying I said I wanted Assange prosecuted, or I said the persecution of Julian Assange, or made it sound like I'm anti-Assange. No, I was talking about how Trump's administration, okay, did persecute and continue to prosecute Assange. And that has to end, all right? And he should have to explain himself for that. And we've done many videos on it. We've talked about the Rohrabacher meeting and how he wanted Julian to basically turn state's witness and give up his sources, and Julian refused. That we don't need to be strong-arming journalists, and that's a great failure of the Trump administration. So my point was to put him on the spot, that his administration, not just, the Zombie J administration, not just the Obama administration, okay? We have to hold everybody accountable. So here is Massey with Waters.
Comfortable right now, are you? Let's bring in Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey. All right, Congressman, what's really going on here?
Well, let's don't downplay the Federal Reserve's role in this. They started out as Santa Claus by bringing us almost zero interest rates, which pushed people out of safe investments and into things like venture capital. And then they became the arsonists during COVID, because when Congress wanted to spend all that money and nobody would loan it to us, the Fed just created $5 trillion out of thin air, and that's what caused inflation. But don't worry, they came in as the firefighters to put the fire out by dousing it with high interest rates. And now they're like the triage doctor trying to stabilize the patients, which are the banks. To your point in your monologue about Biden saying, oh, well, this won't cost the taxpayers anything, I'll rate that as mostly not true if things get worse. Because what they're doing is they insured everybody under $250,000, all the depositors, and premiums were paid into that account. But what Biden is going to do right now at the FDIC, they're going to take all of that money they've saved up to protect the $250,000 depositors and spend it on the $10 million depositors. They're basically going all in on the first 2 or 3 banks, and they're saying, trust us, this is better than just making the small guys whole.
And again, super dangerous. Why are we holding water for multimillionaires and billionaires? Why are we holding water for bankers and their talking points? Period. And again, Massey explained it perfectly there. And I think that we're feeling that slow burn. They want a controlled implosion. They want controlled panic, managed panic. They don't want too much panic, because if there's too much panic, it gets out of control. And they don't want that level of chaos.
Congressman, are people's deposits safe in the United States of America? Is there going to be a bank run? Should we be nervous?
I'm not taking my money out of the bank, and I don't think other people should either. What will happen is there's a Fed backstop to all of this. Again, the Fed's played all of these roles. The other program that they've announced is that the Fed will loan money to banks who are in trouble. The banks who bought Treasury notes and bonds that have gone to 80% of their value, the Fed says, we'll give you a credit for the 20% that's worthless. We'll credit that for a loan. So you can use the worthless part of the bond as collateral for a loan from the Fed. There will be plenty of money. The problem is, I think they're going to print it.
I don't even understand a word you just said, but I do hear something that was said on a call.
I mean, you notice how at the very end he just said they're going to print it. And Jesse, I'm not proud of the fact that you didn't just... I'll explain it, Jesse, and we'll come back to Massey to finish it up. When you invest in the government, the bond is supposed to be secured and you're going to get so much back later on. But all of a sudden, the values of those bonds went down because our government ain't too great right now, Jesse. Involved in a whole lot of war that you've been hawking. All right? Shutting down actual energy and imploding the economy on purpose. So that brings it down 20%. Now, the Federal Reserve that helped do all that says, you know what, we're going to loan you that money. So in other words, you can loan, you can say you have that value even though you have imagination land in value. I mean, it's kind of imagination land anyway, but let's double the imagination land, and then let's print more money on top of it for you to loan out. That's what Massey's saying. He's saying, I think they're going to print it.
With you today. Someone said you're not even allowed to talk about bank runs. Is that true?
Yeah, there was a senator, I believe it was Mark Kelly, who asked if we had a good program to censor this stuff at social media, to censor information so there wouldn't be a run on the banks. The problem is he didn't say he wanted to censor false information or foreign information. He kind of left it open-ended. And, I mean, that's chilling to me. That's their go-to now for the Democrats. Let's censor our way to a solution.
Yeah, censor and print. That's basically the deal.
That's scary. And everybody should realize how scary that is. Okay. So I want to go to the Russia conflict now. And I'm going to point this out before we get there. Syrian President Assad arrives in Moscow, set to meet Putin. Once again, this is a great failure of the Trump administration because Trump, just like WikiLeaks, man. Remember this? Love the WikiLeaks. Can't get enough of the WikiLeaks. Have you seen the WikiLeaks? Rode that WikiLeaks train. And abandoned Assange. Abandoned him. And in the case of Syria, Trump starts going on a roadshow. And he's saying, it's time to get out of Syria. And everybody with a brain, you know, the vast majority of the citizenry in this country, because, hey, most of us want peace and we're anti-war, and we understand after a certain length of time, no matter how dull and brainwashed we've become and docile, that we've been duped. It's time to, what are we really getting out of it? Let's get out, okay? Trump says that, and then the magical attack in Duma happens. Oh, the old magic man happens, right? And Mattis can't even tell you in front of, I believe it was the Senate, whether or not an attack happened, let alone a chemical attack. And the Trump administration ran with the fact, when the media started exposing it through WikiLeaks and the OPCW leaks, all right, that nothing had happened there and it was all propaganda. And people like Pearson Sharp, right? Or not, is it Pearson? Man, I might be getting that name wrong. It's killing me. But the OAN guy went there. He went. He was there. All the mainstream media acted like they couldn't get into that zone. Pearson got in there. And he did real journalism. And he showed, boy, this doesn't look right. Did Trump point to that report? No. He bent the knee. He bent the knee, and we're still there. All right, we're still there. And there's a couple clips after we talk about what's going on with Russia, because he's there, and we're in the middle of a big deal here with this Reaper drone. Basically, the United States is saying, hey, you know, Russia attacked our drone. Russia's saying it was in the wrong airspace and that they just dumped fuel on the drone. I mean, I'm gonna read the article, but it's almost minutia because we have no business being in Syria, just like we have no business arming the Ukrainians and getting involved in this conflict on not even a proxy scale at this point. Let's be honest. It's well beyond proxy scales. We call it a proxy war all we want, but it doesn't feel that way. So first things first, I'm going to play a clip of Chip Roy. And Chip Roy, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, did we even vote on this at all? How are we in this military conflict if Congress, whether we're supposed to be there or not, never actually voted on it? Why are we hiding behind post 9/11 legislation via the Emergency Authorization Act? Or the National, what is it? I'm sorry, it's not the Emergency Authorization Act. It's the National, I'm dying here. Bermas Brigade, tell me what this is. They've renewed it every year. National Defense Authorization Act. That's where it is. Okay, so hiding behind legislation from 2001. Just Roy is 100% common sense here. And most people in this country don't even realize that we mentioned it briefly on the show, that you had Matt Gaetz put out there's no reason for us to be here. Let's get out of Syria. And it lost, I think, 3-1. About, I think 100 plus were saying, yeah, Matt, you're right. And then 300 plus are like, we got to fight them there so we don't have to fight them here. Because we're going to fight a lot of Syrians here and ISIS here. Just like we're going to fight Russians here. I mean, only if things go to a disaster. You'll see Syrians and Russians here if it really goes wild, folks. And whose fault will it be? Jason Bermas, so many pro-Putin talking points. Jumping on the lapdog of Putin, Chip Roy. And by the way, we're going to play Matt Gaetz. And some of the things I agree with, some of them I don't. But we're definitely going to get to those clips as well. But let's start with Chip Roy right now.
From Texas, Mr. Roy.
Thank the Speaker. I thank the gentleman from Kentucky. I thank our colleagues on the other side of the aisle for working with us on that unanimous consent, which I think is important. It is important for us to have a full debate and a full airing of the use of war powers in the United States. As James Madison pointed out, it was critically important that we put that power in Congress. We should have this debate. If we're going to have troops in Syria, this body, this House of Representatives, this Congress ought to speak to it. And we shouldn't hide behind a 2001 authorization of the use of military force and not update that authorization of the use of military force. I'm not here to say whether we should or should not be in Syria. I am here to say that Congress should speak to it. We should debate it. We should decide. We should have an actual conversation in this body, on this floor, when we're going to place our men and women in uniform in harm's way.
Can you disagree with anything he said there? Talk about apolitical, just pointing out the fact that in the constitutional republic that was set up, all right, not eviscerated by things like continuity of government and born classified and the NSA and the CIA and the FBI, back in the good old days, Congress was like, you know what? Maybe we don't want to go die somewhere, kill a bunch of people. Seems a little wild. Can we talk it out? Let's talk it out here first. And then if we can't talk it out here and we feel like there is no talking it out, we'll go fight. But let's vote on it. Wow. Weird and wild stuff.
That is the point that we should be considering. I very much believe that the gentleman from Florida has brought something forward using privileged tools that we have here in the body, and that we should take that under consideration. We should support the resolution the gentleman has brought forward, and if we have concerns, we should then have a debate, a full-throated debate about the use of military force and our men and women in uniform in Syria. I yield back.
Pretty simple. So let's go to Gaetz, and I'm going to stop him periodically and talk about where I think there are some misnomers here. For instance, the idea that some of these people could be on one side of the ledger one day and then another side of the ledger another day. That's basically because they run a mercenary system. And you can flip different assets and people stab you in the back. But at the end of the day, it's our military industrial complex engine that are driving these conflicts.
Much of the discussion today has revolved around whether or not withdrawing from Syria will ignite some new ISIS caliphate. We've pointed out time and again Inspector General's reports saying that that is unlikely. But I'm not entirely sure that us having troops in Syria deters ISIS more than it is a recruiting tool for ISIS. Moreover, President Trump said that if Russia wanted to kill ISIS, we should let them. And I think there is wisdom in that. Both Assad and Turkey are in stronger positions today to put downward pressure on ISIS. And maybe if we weren't given weapons to people shooting at Assad, Assad would have every incentive to be able to engage ISIS.
Yeah. But again, another big failure of the Trump administration is that you had what? The drone bombing of in Iran, esteemed military leader that took on ISIS. All right. And if you look at what created ISIS, sure looks like a U.S. intelligence program. Waka waka.
In a way to ensure that it doesn't come back. And we have to also acknowledge Syria and Iraq are the two countries on the planet Earth where we have done the most to fund ISIS. We give weapons to these so-called moderate rebels, which I actually thought was an oxymoron. And it turns out they're not that moderate. Sometimes the rebels we fund to go fight Assad turn around and raise the ISIS flag. And so it's quite silly to be saying we have to withdraw to stop ISIS when it is our very presence in Syria, in some cases, that has been the best gift to ISIS.
And look, when Matt Gaetz, just like any other politician, when someone gets up, I might tomorrow play Ilhan Omar talking about getting out of Syria. When people step up to the plate, we go, good job. You have my support. That's what we have to do more of. And we have to shine light on stuff like this, because are you seeing this in the mainstream media? Hell no. How much of this are you actually seeing in the alternative media? Not much, McCluskey. Not much at all.
There are groups like Al-Nusra and associated entities that are like our frenemies when they're in Syria, and then they cross over the border into Iraq and they become full-fledged jihadists posing a so-called threat to the homeland. There are 1,500 different groups in Syria. So today's friend is tomorrow's ISIS. And there's no real clear delineation as to what the enduring defeat of ISIS means. Like, do we have to keep 900 Americans in Syria until the last heartbeat stops of the last person who holds some sympathy for ISIS? I would certainly hope not. It would mean we would have to be there forever. Israel has made their deal with Russia to be protected. The Kurds have made their peace with Assad to be protected. And what we see among this quagmire is there's really not a role for the United States of America in Syria. We are not a Middle Eastern power. We have tried this time and again to build a democracy out of sand and blood and Arab militias, and time and again, the work we do does not reduce chaos. Oftentimes, it causes chaos.
So once again, I mean, Gaetz on fire here. Love him, hate him, on fire. And look, I'm as surprised as anybody. You go back to that young buck Bermas back in the day. You notice I'm talking about Democratic leaders because they were the only ones that were speaking out. And it certainly wasn't Joey B., who, again, I was calling Joey B. back in 15 years ago and covering Biden. Weird. All right? Again, because players in the game. But real people like Dennis Kucinich or Mike Gravel, who I had mentioned, they're the deal. They're real. And look, Gaetz wears a lot of makeup on TV. I think that's all. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I got to powder up a little bit. I'm a greasy guy, but you guys see me at my worst. I'm coming on the air no matter what. Okay? He's dead on right here. He's up there. It's the Republican guy. And I hope that Matt Gaetz obviously would continue to do this if a Republican president gets in next. But that Republican president can't be going after Julian Assange. When he says it's time to get out of Syria, we got to get out of Syria. Has to give us a real plan to just say, see ya in the Middle East. And then on top of that plan, I would say that we have to get these privatized mercenary groups under control, because they really do pose a major threat to our constitutional republic and the stability of a peaceful world order if put into the wrong hands. I mean, that's basic.
The very chaos that then subsequently leads to terrorism. My colleagues, my staff who've served in Syria, my constituents tell me that often these anti-ISIS raids are just raids of local thugs and drug dealers who have some cousin that's in ISIS, and it is not appropriate to put Americans at risk. Often our Americans are guarding these oil fields where the Iranians are sending kamikaze drones, and I am shocked that we have not had escalatory accident or even more casualties for our U.S. service members. And so if this is all one big Georgetown School of Foreign Service essay exam about great power competition in Syria. You go tell that to the parents of the Americans who have to sleep tonight in Syria, who have to guard oil fields with Iranian drones coming at them, that they're necessary to preserve the balance of power. That is not true. The Kurds...
I mean, I love everything he's saying right here. Good job, Matt Gaetz. Hell of a hairline, buddy.
...have an opportunity to pave their path. Let's pave ours. And if we're so worried about threats to the homeland, how about we actually focus on our true point of vulnerability, which is not the emergence of some caliphate. It's the fact that terrorists are crossing our southern border on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We seem far less concerned about that, and we undeniably should be.
So let me say this at the tail end of his speech right there. I don't talk about the border issue too much because I totally and completely understand why the vast majority of people from second and third world nations, many of them not Mexicans at this point, South Americans, want to come to the United States if the doors are open. I think that the term terrorist is thrown around broadly. I do not like it because once you call somebody a terrorist, they basically have no due process, and you have you then give the ability for the state apparatus or the authoritative apparatus to paint a narrative which then has no chance of being countered, whether or not that narrative is true or not. And that's why we have due process in this country. And that's why you're allowed to face your accuser, because people are dishonest. And things are complicated. So I always back off on that terrorist thing. I always back off on the border issue because, look, the border issue is such where you think that by putting up a wall, all of a sudden the drugs aren't going to be smuggled in through the cartels. You don't think the cartels are still working with our intelligence agencies? You think, we got them in Iran-Contra, that was it. What? The CIA stopped dealing, the heroin and the cocaine, even though it's just weird that post 9/11, after the Taliban had done this crazy kooky thing, this crazy kooky Taliban thing, where they said, we don't like the opium fields, and we're going to stop that, and we're not going to have those, and 94% reduction, something crazy. Then all of a sudden 9/11 happens, the United States comes in, and now the warlords that have taken over say, good thing we can make these poppy fields very profitable, and good thing the United States is going to guard them for us. But I'm sure there's no backdoor cut there, right? I mean, we're doing that out of the goodness of our heart because after we liberated Afghanistan, they wanted opium again. So it's just like what the fentanyl trade, all of it. If you don't think at some point there's a driving force of U.S. intelligence behind that on the profiteering angle, you're lost. I mean, that's the big problem. That's what needs to be fetted out. Okay. I want to go down the line on some of these stories here. Second hour, starting in only 18 minutes. We fly by here on Reality Rants. Remember, redvoicemedia.com/Jason, redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. It is Wednesday, so Chad Canton comes up after this, and after that, I think it's one after another. You also get Matt Couch, who has started this week. He'll have his third show, and it looks like he's backing off the mic a little bit because it was a little hot. I tried watching that first show. A little hot on that mic, my friend. And by the way, Bermas Brigade, I love it when you let me know how we sound over here, especially when we are a little too hot or a little too low, trying to fix things. Been waiting on the new system. Emailed them yesterday. There was some kind of a clerical error. And now I should have my new system by this Thursday or Friday. Very, very pumped to give that a go. I don't know how much different it's going to actually look, but like I said, I think it's also going to give us an opportunity to have guests in studio and have that type of a conversation as well. So that also excites me. All right, here's a story where it's a distraction story, but this is the kind of thing that's absurd on its face. But I feel like every once in a generation, one of these lawsuits, at least now, comes out Buffalo Wild Wings admits its boneless wings are not wings in response to frivolous $9 million lawsuit from customer that judge dismissed. Thank God the judge dismissed this one. Because what this reminded me of, okay, is when you had, and I like my coffee in the morning, somebody spill hot coffee on themselves from McDonald's or burn themselves by drinking it, and it wasn't labeled. They won that lawsuit. So many people were like, well, that's a damn frivolous lawsuit. Well, obviously, there's no such thing as a boneless wing. Every time I read this, it makes me hungry for wingies, by the way. Tommy want wingy. I might want some wings today, man. Oh, that would be fantastic. In fact, I'm going to, you know what? I'm texting the boys after this. Maybe we get some lunchtime wings. And no, I don't want boneless. And no, I don't want breaded. Ew. Ew. Get the mother tuck out of here. We don't want that. And I do want a little heat. We're going probably, Frank's red hot sauce or better. Delicious. That's what we're talking about. So here's the tweet. Again, we try to have some smiles and sunshine, and it's a good thing that this thing got thrown out there as a distraction, yes. But we're putting it out there. It's true, our boneless wings are all white meat chicken. Our hamburgers contain no ham, and our buffalo wings are 0% buffalo. Yucca, yucca, yucca. Okay? Can you recognize these famous faces? If not, you may have COVID to thank. So now they're saying that long-term COVID has caused prosopagnosia, also known as face blindness. I feel like cartoon world here. I feel like cartoon. Dartmouth University. Okay? Separately, Harvard University has a simple test that you can follow yourself. I mean, the Ivy League has spoken. We're in a cartoon. Google unveils AI-powered magic wand for workspace. Systems will create emails, blogs, and presentations for you. This will circle back to what we were discussing before. Okay, well, and what were we discussing before? We were discussing the fact that what? People are being automated out. You're being automated out of your cushy tech job where you didn't do much. At Facebook, at Instagram. It's going to happen to you at Google. Now's the time to become independent. Okay? That's the truth. So, take a look. Here it is. AI-powered tools to Gmail and the workspace. A lot of people about to lose their jobs. The announcement is the tech giant's new generation AI system rolling out to Google Workspace, adding new capabilities to Docs, Sheets, Slides, and Gmail. The unveiling comes one day before its rival, Microsoft, is set to make a similar announcement. AI ain't coming. It's here. We're getting leaned into it. Automation coming next. Listen up, because it's real. All right, let's get to this next story. This is a Monsters Among Us story, and this is one of those stories where you have to keep an eye on your child. It's not just the stuff that you see all over the alternative media via drag queen, story time, etc. Predators online exist and continue to prey on kids, and they're not going to stop. Cops rescue kidnapped 13-year-old girl from a locked shed in North Carolina after she was groomed, what, via social media? Please keep an eye on your children by this guy, this 34-year-old. This, I believe it was the gray one here. Horrific. And you look at how far, 966 miles. Thank God that girl was alive. Thank God. Like I said, monsters walk among us. So, want to do this story quick here. MIT researchers 3D print patient-specific robotic heart. All right? And probably in the second hour, we're going to get to the entrepreneur dreaming of a factory of unlimited organs. Martine Rothblatt, this is a paid article, but you know what? Man, that kills me. View page source. Watch this. We'll do the inspect. Show some people some tricks of the trade so you can see the headline here. Let's see. So we're going to go. No, that's not the frame I want. No. Come on. See, I did this last night. I forgot I reset. There we go. There it is. Okay, so let's delete that. There it is. So Forbes Healthcare Summit's top 10 leaders of the decade. Martine Rothblatt and the Organ Factory. A factory of unlimited organs. Oh, yeah. So we're going to be talking about that and the new Vanguard transgender entrepreneurship when we get into that second hour. Remember, you can listen for free over at the Info Warrior channel on Podbean. And every day, one of the premiums goes completely free over at redvoicemedia.com anyway, every 2 weeks. And believe me, we're so far ahead of everybody else on some of these subjects. It's like you're getting a whole nother hour for free. You're getting really 2 hours for free if you're not premium. You just have to wait. But I do appreciate all the premium referrals over there. redvoicemedia.com/uncensored, redvoicemedia.com/Jason. So let's talk about this patient-specific robotic heart that they're going to print. And I believe it's right here.
The size and shape of the human heart can vary from one person to the next. And for people living with heart disease, these differences can be particularly pronounced. A team of MIT engineers are hoping to help doctors tailor treatments to a patient's specific heart form and function with a new, soft, custom robotic heart. The team has developed a robotic system to control soft 3D printed replicas of a patient's heart that can be actuated to mimic the patient's blood pumping ability. The procedure involves first converting medical images of a patient's heart into a three-dimensional computer model, which the researchers can then 3D print using a soft polymer-based ink. The result is a soft, flexible shell in the exact shape of the patient's own heart.
And what you're seeing here is before you even get to the biomimetics aspect of it, when you're talking about actual living tissue. This is just a 3D layout and then print of a polymer.
To mimic the heart's pumping action and the motion of the aortic valve in disease, the team has fabricated sleeves similar to blood pressure cuffs that wrap around a printed heart and aorta. They tailored each sleeve's pockets such that when wrapped around their respective forms and connected to a small air pumping system, the sleeves could be tuned separately to realistically contract and constrict the printed models. By using patient-specific data, the researchers are able to accurately recreate the same heart pumping pressures and flows that were previously measured in a specific patient.
And again, this to me is very much technology that is being used to empower people. I'm not against this at all. I think this is good. But once again, I think that we're well beyond this. This needs to be upscaled. And really, they're looking to go beyond just the polymers and into biomimetics, as we've shown you on this program.
Doctors commonly treat heart diseases such as aortic stenosis by surgically implanting a synthetic valve designed to widen the aorta's natural valve in the patient's heart. This new system, developed at MIT, would allow doctors to first print a patient's heart and aorta, then implant a variety of valves into the printed model to see which design results in the best function and fit for that particular patient, informing specific surgical decisions and procedures. In the future, the researchers say these heart replicas could also be used by research labs and medical device industry as realistic platforms for testing therapies for various types of heart disease.
So again, I think that is a technology that we have to keep our eye on, just like we need to keep an eye on Rothblatt, who just sold 8,000 shares of United Therapeutics, one of the things that was actually up. And I believe this was just last week. I think on the 9th is when this went through. I'm always keeping an eye out on Rothblatt, okay? United Therapeutics named one of America's most responsible companies in December Is that correct? Is that like the responsibility of some of these banks? So there's like an old school fake video out there of what some people have said is something crashing on the moon, and then you see like this plume come off the side. It's totally fake. This apparently is the real deal, and what it looks like. I'm going to show it again, guys. Just a little flash by the police, boom, of when an asteroid hits the moon. I don't know if it is or not. I do think it's a little sketchy that this is an amateur astronomer and we never get to see anything legitimate from our space agencies in that respect. I do want to point out that there are 2 clips out there recently, supposedly of Artemis. Okay, and here we're going to go to it. This is supposedly Artemis. I'm going to take that down because we don't need the music. And that's supposedly Earth from Artemis. And Artemis is, again, the one that's going to take us to the moon again. So that's supposedly some NASA footage of Earth from Artemis. I think they said that this is a time lapse. So these are actually photographs that are put into a time lapse. I know people are going to jump all over this one, but we never covered it when it was around. I wanted to cover it now. I've also got another video that's supposedly Artemis from space and the Orion spacecraft showing Earth. So that's supposedly the sun that you're looking at right there. And that's all Artemis. Yep, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be ultra skeptical of that one. And here is the other one. This one's about 5 or 6 minutes long. So I'm going to be chat-a-Latin here. Well, let's see. Let's get it right over. Let's keep skipping until we at least get there. We go. You're going to start to see it at the bottom right there. And that's supposedly Earth at the bottom. It's a little cropped and blocked off compared to where it would be otherwise. Here, let's come over here. Oh, that's even worse. Geez, that is just even worse. How about that one? That one's actually not as bad. That's pretty good. So that's supposedly the Earth from Artemis. You have to make up your own decisions. I'm not saying one way or the other. But I do want to say that Martine Rothblatt has also extended the submission deadline for the National Space Society. Okay, again, Rothblatt is in on everything. Dr. Rothblatt has been a pioneer in satellite communications, founding the Sirius XM network in 1990, later became the chairwoman of the CEO of United Therapeutics Biotechnology company devoted to prolonging human life. And again, TerraSim and the all-important and all-encompassing, not only unzipped genes that we have here, 1997, but from transgender to transhuman, where you see a push for this idea, a grassroots movement, anything but. It's not a grassroots movement. Right? This is a globalist, transhumanist movement. That's what it is. Again, Space Lady. By the way, there it is. That's Earth at the bottom, according to Artemis. That's why you're seeing all this craziness. They want you to disassociate from your humanity, period. This is a real player. Again, top 10 person in healthcare for the past decade. Whether you like it or not, it might be another couple years before Rothblatt gets into the mainstream. You're going to start hearing about Rothblatt and TerraSim, okay? And the printing of organs. This is MIT Technology Review. Remember, MIT also just brought you that heart. Academia is working with governments, a.k.a. DARPA. And by the way, DARPA and MIT, they're peanut butter and jelly. That's an open relationship. Get it? Open relationship. So there's some more Earth right there from this. All right, guys, I want you to thumbs it up, subscribe, and share on the way out. We're going to talk more about Rothblatt. And then I've got some pretty interesting videos on the CIA and media control, as well as Rickshaw Bill Gates. Let's show you Rickshaw Bill Gates. We're not going to play the audio. We'll play the audio on the other side because I don't want any kind of a strike. But there he is. He's in his electric rickshaw. They love you. They love you. And to show you how much they love you, when we go over to the other side, I've got a young global leaders mantra that we're actually going to begin with. So it's going to be fake news, the CIA, global leaders, from transgender to transhuman, and so much more. redvoicemedia.com/Jason, redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. Go get it. $1 for the first week, $10 a month, $100 for the entire year. Lock it in. So we're going to talk to the producer. We're going to say goodbye one at a time, and then we're going to kick off the Global Leaders video, where you have this person basically telling you, we're taking charge, and we're the best thing since breakfast, and we've got a climate crisis, but don't worry, we're going to take action, and we've got sustainable, equitable solutions. Rockfin, we'll see you